Hey y'all, what's up? It's Amanda and I am back with another video. So today's video is going to be my March wrap-up. I almost forgot what month it was for a second. Sorry I've been MIA. I've just been dealing with school stress, and then if you saw my last video, you saw that I had spring break and it took me a while to edit that video. So that's where I've been. But I guess, yeah, without further ado, let's just get right on into the video. So one thing I'm trying to do with my wrap-ups is do them a little differently. So I want to do statistics first. Let's go over my reading statistics and see how I did, what my reading looked like in the month of March. So I'm looking on the Storygraph app. I always have my social medias linked in the description down below, by the way. I have Instagram, Threads, TikTok, the Storygraph, and Goodreads. The Storygraph is mainly where I update my reading, and you can see like my stats and stuff like that on there. So follow me or friend me on all those. Anyways, I read 8 books this month. It is currently March 31st, and I doubt I'm gonna finish another book by the end of today. So, because I have a lot of homework to do today, so I'm just like, I don't have time to be reading anymore for pleasure. But anyways, I read 8 books in the month of March. I read 2,686 pages, and I read for 7.9 hours. My moods this month, the top 4 were emotional, tense, dark, and adventurous. My reading pace was 50% medium paced and 50% fast paced. My page number this month, which is like what varies the most, I feel like my reading this month was a little different than normal months. But anyways, so 50% of the books I read this month were less than 300 pages. 25% were between 300 and 499 pages, and then 25% were 500 plus pages, which is not normally a statistic that I have. I barely ever read a book that's over 500 pages, and this month I read 2 books that were over 500 pages. For audiobook length, this statistic isn't accurate because a majority of the books that I read audiobook and physically, so like in tandem together. So this statistic says that I haven't read any audiobooks, but I have. I've read a ton. But in terms of books where I read solely via audiobook, I haven't finished a book solely via audiobook, if that makes sense. I started a book that I'm reading solely via audiobook, but I haven't finished it yet. In terms of fiction versus nonfiction, I read 88% fiction and 13% nonfiction. In terms of my genres, my most read genre was romance with 5 books, then fantasy with 4 books, LGBTQIA with 3 books, and then all the others are tied for 1 book. I have tagged all my books so I know how many books I'm reading that I own versus are like library books or like are e-arcs. So for my tags, 7 books were tagged as owned and 1 book was tagged as a library book. For format, as I said, this one isn't super accurate because I normally read books in tandem with the audiobook and the physical book, but this one says that it was 100% print. And then my star ratings, I had an average of 4.06 for my star rating. Everything was a 3-star or above this month, so I consider that a really good reading month. Those are all the statistics that I have to share with y'all. Now let's get into the books that I read. First book that I finished in the month of March was A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This book was wild. I am obsessed with this book. I want to reread it. And that's not something that I normally say. I don't normally reread books. Like only like absolute favorites do I reread. And this one was just chef's kiss. I gave this 5 stars. I just want to say I am not going to talk about the plot for A Court of Mist and Fury because that is like the second book in a series. and I don't want to spoil the series even though like it's been out for a while. And then same for this next book. The next book that I finished in the month of March was Mislaid in Parts Half Known by Shauna McGuire. And this is like the 9th or the 8th book in the series. So I'm not going to share what happens. I'm just going to share my thoughts. This book was a little disappointing for me. I gave this a 3.5 stars, which is not a bad rating by any means. I just was expecting more adventure. And there was a little bit of adventure, but the first half of the book felt a little bit like a recap, which I didn't really feel was needed. Even though, like I said, it is like the 8th or the 9th book in a series, I don't know. I just felt like I didn't need the recap, and I think it took up too many pages. So yeah, those are my feelings. The next book that I read was Misery by Stephen King. This book is like gross. This is a gory book, which I wasn't anticipating. I thought it was just gonna be like a horror with like only scary ideas in it, not like actual gore in it, if that makes sense. But yeah, this was pretty gory. I read this mostly on my drive to and from my boyfriend's house, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting. I ultimately gave this a 3.75. It kept my attention. It was very interesting, but it just didn't have like that special something to give me a higher rating, you know what I mean? Like I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but this was just like it was a good book. It just wasn't outstanding. I also wanted to mention, sorry for the change of appearance, I was like wrapping up after the video, and then I realized I forgot to talk about, when I talked about Misery by Stephen King, I forgot to talk about how this was a prompt or like whatever, a pick from the TBR jar, and I totally completed that. So keep an eye out for my April TBR to see what book we are going to be reading next month. So far I've been doing good and reading every single book that I've picked, but it's also only 3 months into the year. So hopefully we can keep that up. We'll see what happens. The next book I have to share with you is A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. I finally got around to reading this, and I'm going to be honest, I was disappointed by this. I gave this a 3 stars. I was expecting this to be a 5-star read, to be honest. If you saw my last vlog, you saw me talk about this book, and the gist of it is that I didn't feel connected to the main character or any of the other side characters. I felt a little like disconnected from them. It was a little like at arm's length, that like I just didn't feel the same emotions that the main character was feeling. There's a couple reveals that you're supposed to like gasp at, and I was just like, wow. But I didn't feel like heartbroken the way that the main character felt heartbroken. So yeah, the writing was beautiful. I liked the storyline. I appreciated the queerness and the polyamory and all that it had to say, but ultimately it just didn't give me that 5-star feeling, and yeah, a little disappointed by this, like I said. Alrighty, the next book that I read was a nonfiction. It is the only nonfiction that I read this month, and it is called Against Techno-Ableism, Rethinking Who Needs Improvement by Ashley Shue. This book was very interesting. I enjoyed my time reading it. I gave it a 3.25. I thought it was very informative, and it talked about topics that I had never heard anybody talk about before. I'm going to read you a little bit of a description. There's a lot that Storygraph has in the description about this. I'm just going to read the top part that's in bold. It says, a manifesto exploding what we think we know about disability and arguing that disabled people are the real experts when it comes to technology and disability. So it does talk about disability and technology and the views that we as like able-bodied people have on disability, and how almost like we need to fix people with disabilities with the technology that we have, stuff like that. It brought up a lot of interesting conversations. I just thought it was very short, and I wanted more. That's all I really have to say about it. I thought it was, like I said, very interesting, and well thought out. I just wanted more of a conversation about these topics, and I felt like it went really, really fast. Like, I don't know if it was just me, but I wanted to like sit with it more. I guess I was rushing through it, and that was just like a personal experience that I had, but I felt like there were certain things that I should have sat with more. So I guess that was really on me, not the book's fault. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Against Techno-Ableism. The next book that I have to share with you is Sweat and Soap Volume 6 by Kintetsu Yamada. This, again, is Volume 6 in a manga series, so I'm not going to really talk too much about it. I'll just tell you guys that the main couple celebrated Valentine's Day together, and it was just so cute. They finally moved in together as well. That's like part of the plot. And I just loved it so much. It's so cutesy and heartwarming, and I love this couple a lot. And it just makes me happy. I give this 5 stars. Okay, second to last is A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J. Maas. I cannot believe that I finished this month, along with A Court of Mist and Fury. Like, I finished 2 of these chonkers of books. I hope that makes sense. But again, this is 3rd book in a series, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. I'm just going to say that this book was wild from start to finish. A lot happened. This is a lot more action-packed than the past couple books. And I ultimately gave this a 5 stars. It's not as like outstanding of a 5 star as A Court of Mist and Fury was, but it was hovering at like a 4.5 for most of the book, and then the ending, I was just like, oh my goodness. It had me feeling all the feels, so I had to bump it up to a 5. I love this series. I never thought I would say that. I never thought I'd read this series, but here we are. And yeah. And lastly, this is the last book that I finished in March. I finished it today, just in time for Trans Day of Visibility. And this is The Feeling of Falling in Love by Mason Deaver. This follows, wow, I forget the characters' names already. This follows Neil, who is a trans boy, the beginning of the book is a little complicated. His friends with benefit situation ends up professing their feelings for Neil. And Neil is like, oh, pump the brakes there, buddy. No. I do not feel these feelings for you. And the problem is that this friends with benefits person that Neil was engaged in this relationship with was Neil's date to his brother's wedding. So he scrambles, 1, to find a date, and 2, to kind of get this person off Neil's back. He finds a date by asking his roommate, Wyatt, to be his fake boyfriend and his like fake date or whatever to the wedding. And then shenanigans ensue, feelings ensue, and it's very much a fun, silly, goofy time, but also it talks about some hard-hitting topics. It talks about being trans, what that means, queerness, questioning your gender identity, and also talks about like familial relationships. Neil's parents are divorced, so it talks about like being the child of a divorced couple, stuff like that. And I really enjoyed this. I gave this 4 stars. It wasn't like anything outstanding, that's why I didn't get a 5 star. Neil is insufferable sometimes, like his line of thinking. I'm just like, why are you thinking that way? I don't understand. But like, I also get it because he's got some trauma he's been through. He's got some stuff he needs to deal with through therapy. But yeah, ultimately a 4 star. I really highly recommend. This is a fun little romance, but it also is like a little emotional, and I really loved it. All right, y'all, here is my stack, my March wrap up. I forgot the words there for a second. Here are all the books that I read in March. I can't believe I read this much, like 8 books while I'm in school. I read almost 3,000 pages. Like, that is absurd to me. But yeah, let me know any books that you recommend to me, any books you want to see me read. I'm always open to new suggestions, and I'll most likely add a book to my TBR just because you recommended it. Like, if you make it sound good, I'm hooked. I'm there. So let me know any books that you read this month that were 5 stars. My 2 5 stars this month were the Sarah J Maas books. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please subscribe to my channel if you like this video, and give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed. Give me any video recommendations that you have in the comments down below as well. I'm always open to those. I have a couple ideas in mind. I want to start vlogging more, so we'll see where that goes. And I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.